folks go visit this site?
No.
The Bolton?
Did you?
Yeah, it's a mess down there. I don't know what they're gonna do with it, but
When I visited,
It got denied by the
and I
city.
saw his email, and
I didn't see any emails. I haven't looked at that lately.
an email came on my phone.
Okay, there's a $1 fine if your phone goes off. $2 if mine goes off.
Good.
Gee, was here. I don't know where he went. He was sitting over here before, so I don't know why.
They got snow out west.
Are we? We're waiting to make sure that we are actually streaming, so, it is 12:01, and we will call this meeting of the Findlay City Planning that's a good start. Findlay Planning and Zoning Committee to order. We have 3 cases today, and we're going to hear them in this order. We're doing the Mardick annexation first, followed by a street vacation, and then the West McPherson. The West McPherson case is last. For the West McPherson case, we'll do public comment at the beginning of that, and then have the applicants' representatives talk, and then and that's usually pretty interactive between us and the applicant's representatives. So to start off, we're going to we're going to do the Mardick annexation, annexing it in as a M2 multifamily high density. Jake or Jacob?
I'll go ahead and read my staff comments. So this request is located southeast of the intersection of Technology Drive and Midwest Court. The site is currently vacant, and it is in the process of being annexed in the city of Findlay. In May of 2022, the applicant submitted a site plan for rezoning of the area north of the site, and it was rezoned from C2 general commercial to M2 multifamily high density. And given that the site is part of that development, we were supportive of the zoning request.
That's city planning.
City Planning Commission unanimously recommended approval of the rezoning. Essentially what we're looking at, this is a site plan for apartments and housing was approved here. Within that process, they realized there was a sliver of land that was not in the city of Findlay. That's being annexed. As part of any annexation, it's given zoning, and that's the process we're doing now. So this is essentially cleaning up a little bit of parcel work and zoning for a larger project that's been approved.
Okay, thank you. I know that Phil Rooney, attorney for the applicant, is here. He is a rare attorney, a few words, and so said he doesn't need to speak unless we have questions for him. So questions or comments for anyone from the committee?
Not here. No.
Anybody in a mood to make a motion? I'd move that we approve the
Brian made a motion.
oh, Brian? Sorry,
If you want to make the motion.
go ahead, you're up.
I make the motion for approval of the rezone.
I'll second.
We have a motion to approve as requested by Mr. Ballman, second by Mr. Hellman. Questions or comments on the motion? All in favor of approving as requested, say aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. It's approved.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rooney. You were brilliant as always.
Well,
You tried. Next case on the agenda, is request from James Bowser, owner of Performance R&D, to vacate Bolton Street from Barnett Street south to where it dead ends. Jacob.
Okay, so like you said, the request was to vacate Bolton Street from the intersection of Barnett Street south to the dead end where it actually meets up with the bike path. R&D Performance LLC, which is owned by Mr. James Bowser. He owned all of the abutting property except for the one right at the bike path, which is owned by the city of Findlay. So the applicant had requested the vacation due to safety and security concerns. Mr. Bowser owns the property on either side of the street. He stated that with the increase of pedestrian traffic around the site, it has led to security issues for his business, which is located on the west side of Bolton Street there. The city of Findlay is an abutting property owner at the south end of the site, and the city of Findlay did not sign the petition to vacate the street. After discussions with the city engineer, it was noted that there is a major water line that runs underneath Bolton Street in that section, and there's also a sanitary sewer as well in that strip. So if the street was vacated, the city would also be losing access, one of the access points into Swale Park. So our staff recommendation was to deny the Alley Street vacation petition for vacation.
And City Planning Commission's,
They unanimously voted to recommend denial of the request.
great. Is anybody from is the applicant or a representative here?
Yeah.
Are you Mr. Bowser?
Yeah.
If you want to have something to say, please.
I'm well aware of the access to the sewer line and the water line, and that's not a problem. You guys can have access to that through easement. But my concern is the excess traffic and all the trash and the vandalism and even the arson at my property with that road being there. That was never an access for anything. When I purchased that property, it was a swamp back there. Nobody went back there for anything. Well, now you guys have turned it into a attraction and invited everybody into this area, but you have public access at Fox Street Park and you have public access at Swale Park. You don't need that access at that location, and that's what's causing all the issues and the problem. So if I had the vacation of the street, I could fence off that so I wouldn't have the access with numerous, anything from pedestrians to dirt bikes to go-karts to minivans with trailers on the back, just going down the bike trail, just because they don't want to get out, But yeah, and then of course the maintenance of the ditch, that property, nobody's maintaining the ditch. So it's all up to me to maintain it. And the shape of the ditch, I don't own equipment that can maintain that. We spoke earlier, they said they've already called somebody to maintain the ditch. We spoke earlier about that. But yeah, that's the whole issue is there's the traffic. The street wasn't designed for that traffic. It was designed for commercial. You guys got children and tricycles and bicycles running up and down through there. Meanwhile, there's trucking company running in and out of there with semis. It's not designed for that. So is it commercial or is it a bike path?
So you're saying traffic gets down there and they turn around and come back? Or
No, they don't even turn around and come back. They just take off through Swale, through the bike trail or whatever. So yeah, they just come and go as they please. But it's a nuisance to me and my property. And now that you've invited everybody back through there, they just constantly go trespassing through my property all the time. And even though they say put up trespassing signs, there's nobody that's going to enforce it. There's no, you're not going to abide by any rule or any law if there's no enforcement. So why make a rule or why make the law?
Mr. Hellman.
Yeah, I've got a question for the staff, Matt or Jacob or Eric. Did the Planning Commission consider vacating this with an easement for the utilities, that they can maintain the utilities?
So one of the staff recommend, we often vacate alleys
Yeah.
when you know, in my mind, there's no potential future use. You know, this is a potential public and city access to a pretty large park area. And just from a planning standpoint, I would hate to, 25 years from now, the city has some plans for the park or different things, and for them to say, oh, I wish we had access there. You know, so I'm sympathetic to the concerns of the applicant. You know, there's, you know, homelessness issues, people setting up homeless camps back here, trash and debris. And I hope that the city can help them with that. But I don't want to have the city regret giving up a street access to their property in the future. In the discussion, you know, the applicant and zoning talked together about, you know, potentially installing a fence, doing some things like that, and to the point of, Eric mentioned that no trespassing signs are valuable, and that when the police or the zoning official goes out to enforce it, when it's posted no trespassing, it's a clear violation, where if it's not posted, then the person can kind of claim, well, I thought this was just part of the park, etc. So a lot of discussion about that. The discussion was, how can the city help with some of these issues that the property owner is experiencing?
Can I follow up with that? I was out there a couple of times to look at this, most recently again this morning. Who owns the duplex that faces that? Because there's a driveway
Mine.
that comes. That's you?
Mine.
Okay, so you wouldn't be taking away anybody's access to that?
No, and I wouldn't be tilling off the street. I mean, there's still gonna be a street there. You know, I'm just trying to keep the public. Like, when I bought the property, there was no public back there. You guys understand, that was a swamp. That was basically a junkyard. Even people wouldn't walk back there even if they had to. You didn't do that. You'd take the bike trail that's along the river, and that was the main access. But now they put the bike trail in and ran it up around in the order in which they did. And if you see the angle of the bike trail coming from Swale, which Swale has a huge park entrance there, you don't need my entrance. Fox Street on this side has a fairly large park entrance on the left side. You don't need my street for park entrance. But the angle that they cut that path in, that puts everybody to go straight across my property out to the street and out to the road. And like I said, and you can't enforce that. You got one guy walking through there, a 12-year-old kid, you're gonna write him a ticket? You know, 10-year-old kid riding his bicycle? You know, that's not my goal. I don't want a 10-year-old kid to be in court for walking through my property. But you guys have led the general public down through there. And even still today, the south end of my property, you don't legally have access to it. But yet you built your trail all the way to the right. Would you please highlight that so that everybody can see it? Yeah. You built the trail all the way to the right side, which is the east. You built the trail all the way to the left side, which is the left. What did you think people were going to do?
So I'd say the litigation that you have with the county is not
Yeah,
pertinent to
but
the
I mean,
city.
but the city's not doing any thought process.
So I would say, you know, the vacation of this street is not the result of the vacation of the street does not prevent you from putting a fence on your property.
On my property, but yet you still have the alleyway or the streetway that they're driving up and down anything that they can drive through there. You know?
I know for my case, I do ride a bike on that bike path, and where it stops, more often than not, I am using the street that the vacation request is being made for, to then go up and then back over to Fox because it doesn't go through. And so to remove that street really, to remove that street turns that section of that bike path into a dead end. And and for that reason, that
It was a dead end before.
For that reason, no. Before it actually went around, it actually went on the closer to the river. But obviously, we know that benching took the benching project, which provided the flood relief for for a large part of the city, and you know, had that which was for that, cut that existing bike trail that had been there for decades, cut that out. So, I'm opposed to that because of that very reason, that it prevents that access to exit the bike path and go around where it is closed. Ms. Frishy.
My questions are going to be kind of more towards you, Matt. So the applicant followed the process. All abutting properties are in favor of the vacation. I don't quite understand where his property ends, where the bike path ends.
So he owns, this is
Yeah.
he owns this all the way down to here, and on this side he owns the triangle piece, this lot right here.
And then what does the city own?
So the city owns this little triangle piece all the way over here.
Okay, so did he need to have the city in agreement or not? Is my first question, with the process that we follow for vacating an alley,
So,
since he was going up to it, or not up, is he up to it or not up to it?
yeah, so so if, we're one and the same in that we approve the vacation. So we're considering approval or denial, in my mind, as signing off on the vacation.
Sure.
So, because we would be kind of doing the same process in order to sign off on the vacation.
So,
Rather than doing this twice.
so did we need the city in on the petition as an abutting property owner to be in agreement to vacate? Based off our current
I
practices?
don't think so, because we're one and the same. We're the person that grants it. So
Okay.
by granting it, we are essentially signing off on it.
So then what it would be is not 100% support, where then he would have to do the advertising 6 times in the paper, and if there's no objection, then it would come to council for approval.
Correct.
So, because we're kind of one, so,
We're one and the same.
yeah, so it's kind of a gray area. So then my other question, I mean, I hear what Grant's saying as a bike rider, but the fact that it's a dead end has to do with the planning of that original bike path. So I don't think that's a reason to deny vacating this alley when the petitioner followed the process. But then my other question is it a utility easement alley or not?
Well, one, it's a public street. Just,
So it's considered a street and not an alley?
it's a public street.
Okay.
It's Bolton Street. There's a 16-inch water line, which what's the name? Transport line. It's delivering
Sure.
water to large parts of the city. An easement could be put in. I don't believe there's an easement because it's already in the city right of way.
But if we
this were
vacated,
vacated, an easement would be put in there.
so then that would take care of your question and concern about having access to the utility, the city utility underneath, if we added that easement in.
I don't want to, the concern is, and we had some conversation with the city engineer. He's out today, sick, but there is concern about how much room is needed to service such a big line.
How much room width-wise, but
Yeah.
then if we had to dig up a property owner's property like we would do in the street, we would repair that and take it back.
I think they're just navigating. So I can't speak very well to the utility. I
Yeah.
would say this would be the largest utility that we vacated over.
You mean the size, the
Just
size of
the
it?
size.
So-
Other than that, I can't speak too much towards that. From our staff point of view, in planning, it's sometimes hard to know what comes in the future, and
We can always look at what ifs, but we're looking at, right now, I
Sure,
get you,
but-
yeah.
I think preserving access to I agree. As of today, this isn't a major access point, and there are other access points. But I don't know what the future holds for that public city ground and what they might decide to do there. And I would hate for us to regret not having that access in the future.
because you think of it as because it's a street and not an alley is why you're looking at that differently? I mean, we vacate alleys and everybody in agreement that abuts it, we do it. So, but the difference for you is because it's considered a street?
Well,
I mean, alleys are considered a street.
well, alleys are not streets. They're both public right of way. I'd say when I look at alleys, I mean, most of them we're vacating a very short piece, and they're not often one of the connections to a lot of undeveloped land. It's all built around, and the future use of that is pretty much known that it's always going to serve those homes, and those homes don't mind getting rid of it.
Other questions from Mr. Ballman?
So I think what I hear you saying is, should we, in the future, put additional ball fields along that or whatever the case may be, we need public access.
You can't put
To lose
ball
that
fields
public
there.
Access. Or in other words, should we decide to develop in addition to the,
A lot of it's the river widening.
okay.
You know, as
That's all flood. Storage.
Sure.
You can't, I mean, you could bring in a ball field and elevate it if you really wanted to, but that'd be against the law in my opinion. But yeah, you can't put a ball field in the bottom of a dry river or dry storage area. That wouldn't be recommended.
So, and at the same time, people are allowed to go on public right-of-ways.
Mhm.
And I just haven't heard a compelling case for the city to deny access to their property forever because we have a few people walking up and down the street.
We have
Ms.
Fox
Frishy.
Street
Ms.
over here to the
Frishy.
left. You point at that Fox Street entrance.
There are other accesses to the park,
Yeah.
but why should the city sacrifice permanent access to this end of the park because people are going up and down the street?
Ms. Frishy?
So I hear what Matt's saying. I also like to follow our process, and you've done that, sir. I would make a motion that we approve the vacation based off the petitioner following the process, and that there is still access to the park, and that is a flood area, so ballparks and such would not go in there, and there are other access points. So that would be my motion.
Could you repeat that motion?
I make a motion to approve the alley vacation as requested with the utility easement put in place.
We have a motion to approve.
Sorry, can I make the wording fix for the gentleman next to me? The street
Okay.
be vacated.
We have a motion to approve. Is there a second? Motion dies for lack of a second.
Let me go back for a minute.
Mr. Hellman.
If we were to approve the vacation of the street with a utility easement in there, is there a way to close that off to appease his concerns? Close the street? Do we have to leave it open?
Well, I mean, this hearing is to close the street. If
Well, that's, no.
if we
I misspoke.
if we close the street, what will happen is the property
I'm-
from that point, the property will be split in half,
Yeah,
and each adjoining parcel will receive 50%.
yeah.
Did you mean just
I'm-
at the south end of the?
No, I misspoke. I meant that if we do not approve it, and if we do not approve the vacation, is there a way to close that off to traffic? City maintains ownership of it to take care of your concerns, but it also would take care of his.
Don't know the answer. That would be an engineering department question. I don't know the answer to that.
Close the street and retain ownership. Okay.
Don't know that answer.
They've
sorry.
just started to use that street as an access into the park within the past, since they built the new bike trail there, so I'll say past a year, 2 years? Other than that, there was never any access back there. In fact, it was so overgrown, you really couldn't get through there, even with a vehicle. I mean, you could have knocked trees down and floored it, but it's not gonna get through there.
Gotcha.
So,
Ms. Frishy?
I think Dennis made a good point. So if we could shut down the entrance coming off of, is that Howard? What's the main street that comes up to this?
Barnett is the end
So if
there.
we were able to shut that down at that end and shut it down at the bike path,
You'd have to shut it down for pedestrians.
We're having a zoning question, and the question is should we recommend to full council whether we vacate this street, this portion of this street? It's not how to work a situation outside of zoning. So I'd like to keep the conversation focused specifically on the question at hand.
well, I think the question that he stated was valid because we do that in the city. Our street department does put up guardrails to shut down access without vacating.
It's not germane to whether we vacate, we recommend vacation of the street. Is there any other comments from folks on the committee? Anybody in a motioning mood? Mr. Hellman.
I'll second the motion to vacate with a utility easement reserved.
So we have a motion to vacate with a utility easement and a second. Questions or comments on the motion? I will vote against that motion because as per the applicant's own words, once the bike path was created, it started using, Bolton started being used as access to the bike path, which otherwise dead ends there. It's a public street with a water main, and so I will vote against the motion to approve. Other questions or comments on the motion? All those in favor of approving the request to vacate, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Nay. So that is 3-2. Thank you.
Motion passed, correct? Yes. Motion passed.
And then now it goes to city council. Can we talk about the other option that we discussed? I don't mean it here.
Yeah.
Offline sometime between now and
We'll
council.
need to, Jeremy Calv, the city engineer, he's kind of the keeper of the streets. He can tell you if it can be shut off and still retain ownership and things like that. We can talk, but I won't give you good answers.
Howard, that was approval of the vacation request. What was the language on the right of way?
My motion was to vacate the street and to put a utility easement in for the city of Findlay.
And we'll now move on to the request to vacate, not vacate, excuse me, request to rezone 119 West McPherson Street to C1 local commercial from R2 medium lot residential. That case is currently on the table. Mr. Hellman?
Yeah, I would move that we lift the McPherson case off the table for discussion.
Second, Mr. Ballman. All in favor of lifting it from the table, say aye. Aye. Those opposed, same sign. It is removed from the table. Jacob, any comments, or do you want to, should we just roll right into public comment? We'll go with, start the public comment process. We'll say that we're going to use council's rules on public comment. It's a 4-minute limit. The comments are directed to the committee members here. And first up is Emily Birchfield, 1610 Grant Boulevard.
Good afternoon, committee members, friends, and neighbors. My name is Emily Birchfield, and I live in the neighborhood of Sherman Park. So I want to thank you for the opportunity to talk about the zoning issue and how it'll impact my family and my neighbors. So I grew up in Findlay, and we recently moved back in June. Our good friend is a realtor in Columbus, so we asked him to help us find a home in town. And when we sat down to go over our list of must-haves, I just had one. It must be on the south end. This is where I grew up, and when I think about raising my son in Findlay, this was the place I wanted to be. I wanted him to be able to walk to my parents, to ride his bike to school, to take our dog on a walk to Donnell. Our realtor was a little dismayed that I gave him a 10-block radius in the tight market that was this March, but the first time he came to Findlay, he got it. This was a neighborhood where you want to raise your family. And over the last 6 months, our decision to buy a home on the south end has been rewarded. It's as amazing as I thought it would be. My son spent this summer exploring every alley, every sidewalk, and every square inch of Donnell. And if you live down there, you probably have seen him walking our 8-year-old black lab, Izzy, on one of his many adventures. We also reveled in the South End charm during homecoming, Halloween parades. We watched as hundreds of people joined us in our neighborhood to celebrate our hometown. Even something as simple as taking a walk down Main Street, admiring the beauty of those grand old homes or the magnificent trees, it helps me appreciate where we are. This neighborhood, a neighborhood that you often just get to read about, it's real, and I get to live there. We get to live here. And so when I first heard about the rezoning issue, I immediately started talking to my neighbors. We were all shocked that this was even a possibility, especially after the Kroger gas station was denied. My neighbor Cindy and I decided to go around to our neighbors and make sure that folks were aware of this issue and of the situation. And we asked folks to sign a letter showing opposition to the rezoning. Everyone we talked to expressed concern. Folks were afraid for their kids' safety walking to and from school. They're concerned about their property values, and they're worried about the increase in traffic, especially with the EMS station and the hospital just a few blocks away. We had over 100 people sign the letter of opposition to the rezoning, and this is why I'm here today. I ask that you hear my neighbors and myself, and you don't allow this area to be rezoned. We can't allow rezoning for commercial use and expect to retain the safety and the charm of the neighborhood. We cannot become the next Trenton or Tiffin Avenue and expect that our kids will still be able to walk to school safely, or that yards on Main Street will not become littered and dirty, or that our roads will not become congested with more and more accidents. We don't have lawyers, and we don't have money to pay for a traffic study, but I know that if you stand on the corner of South Main and 6th Street when school's let out, or during the Halloween parade, or any random Saturday afternoon, you will quickly see how it is not possible to retain the safety and the charm of the area and allow for an increase in commercial use. So please help us, help our neighborhood, and don't allow the rezoning of the property on McPherson. Thank you.
Questions for Emily? Thank you. Next up is Dan Romick, 10, making you walk there, Emily, sorry.
No.
Dan Romick, 1009 South Main Street.
Can you hear me now? Thank you to this group thank you for the opportunity to address this group. Before I go further, I have had the opportunity to speak in front of council, and I really appreciate that. And I was able to speak in front of the Zoning and Planning Commission, and I appreciate that. Both times I also referenced the number of trick-or-treaters that we have on South Main, which is quite the event. I first said 1,500. I had a neighbor correct me and said it was closer to 1,200, and their talk in opposition afterwards. My neighbor Caddy Corner from me actually said we had 1,400 trick-or-treaters on South Main Street this year. So I am acting also as a representative for our neighborhood association, which is an informal association, but we have a lot of fun. But our goal is to preserve and maintain the charm that is South Main Street. I know they'd previously talked about a traffic study, and what I passed out to you was just my research. I took the time to put together what I think is maybe a traffic study or analysis, but I by no means am a professional. Here's what I found. In Findlay, in the fast food corridors such as Trenton Avenue and Tiffin Avenue, the traffic count in those areas are 2 to 2.5 times as much traffic as what we see on that area of South Main. The maps that I found, they didn't have anything for McPherson because it's just not a busy street at this point. In other like communities that I was able to poll, such as Fostoria and Defiance, where they have similar businesses, the traffic count was about the same. With several more options in those fast food corridors, it appears to me, with my math, there's one a like business such as a fast food restaurant or a business that you can go in and get a meal from really quickly, maybe like a Five Guys or something like that. There's one fast food like business between to every 1,200 to 1,500 drivers that go down those corridors every day. And the proposed location, where we're looking at the zoning change with the proposed business to go in there, right now it's almost a 10,000 to 1 traffic count to that one location, plus the additional traffic driving in off of the major thoroughfares that would be coming. That's where I included a Google Maps screenshot or snip that you have in your packet. I know it's pretty archaic, and I used a highlighter to give arrows, but it is what it is. The first maps that you saw in your packet were just ODOT maps that I got off their website that talks about the traffic count on a daily basis. For a business standpoint, I get why this is appealing. If you're a 10,000 to 1 versus a 1,200 or 1,500 to 1 traffic count, that makes a lot of sense. I see that from a safety standpoint. I feel like this is when you go to, a local pond and you feed the koi fish, and what you see when you feed the koi fish, because they're all going for your food, there's a lot of impatience and crashing into each other. So again, I feel like that would happen at this intersection. Both intersections are challenging. Previously, the McDonald's attorney that presented a map to council about the zoning of the properties on West McPherson that were not technically residential. We obviously can see that those properties are not residential, but you're really comparing to apples to oranges. In my understanding, that some of those were actually pre-built, built pre-zoning, and also you really can't compare the current traffic flow on West McPherson as it comes around the church and down the way as you see the traffic flow at the South Main and McPherson intersection, 6th Street, Lake Cascades intersection. There's nothing that even comes close to comparing that, in my opinion. In addition, I can't stress enough that it's just not the neighbors that hold our local history in high regard. If you look at the final 2 maps I included, many citizens and organizations promote our South Main as something to see.
Need to wrap it up.
Yep, something to see, such as the Visit Findlay map for a walking tour and the Hancock Historic Homes tour. That actually shows it as a historical area in that map. I'm not saying we shouldn't have a McDonald's. I'm not saying we shouldn't have something that's more convenient. I'd probably like that if it was in a better location. I know we all have history in this area. Some of us have been here. My family's actually pioneer ancestors to Hancock County. Just because we have history doesn't always mean it's not right for today. And if I was trying to do something that wasn't right for today, I would hope that he would deny that. If it's not right, it's not right. Thank you.
Questions or comments for Mr. Romick? Ms. Frischi?
I appreciate that information you gave us on traffic counts. All of the discussion and context I get with the McPherson rezone, that's not where they're going to physically place the McDonald's. The proposed location is on the main street. So my question to you is, that area is already zoned that, whether that additional area were to be added. So what would the neighborhood object to anything going in there, or they would be okay if it stayed the current structure that was there? Is it the aesthetics? Because it's, from what we saw from our first meeting, that 37-foot wide parcel is going to be a buffer to accommodate those residential areas. So McDonald's is on Main Street. It's zoned for that. the person who owns that property.
Is there a question for
Yeah,
Mr.
my
Romack?
question is, what would you propose, or what would would it be the aesthetics being different that they would support it? Is it, I agree, traffic is my biggest concern, that I want to see those facts. But what, other than that, if that 37-foot wide is a buffer, it's not where
Is
the
there a question for
structure.
Mr. Romack?
I'm speaking to Mr. Omick, yes, Grant.
Is there a
So my
is there a question?
question is, what would be supportive if it's
Okay,
landscape?
Mr. Romack, the question to you is what would be supportive?
I think you have to look at it, and it's a sticky situation. You have a buyer and a seller. I think as you look at the Move Findlay Forward study, and I'm assuming others will probably speak to that later, we have a desire from our local establishments, ones that wouldn't drive in the traffic, and that is my biggest concern as a parent. And just trying to drive through there, and we've talked about that
So
at
that's the
length.
drive-through.
That's the drive-through, I think, is
That's-
the big thing. And with the zoning to that point, and again, I'm not a professional, and I just kind of saw the map, it looked like they were moving the part of the entrance off of McPherson more towards that backside, and the part that we want to rezone to make that part of it, and then adding the arborvitaes. I think they want to add several, which are up there, whatever, but part of that
It would be an exit.
would be
yes.
part of an exit and entrance, and then pushing that through over the Lake Cascades Parkway. I don't see how that makes sense. Challenging. I think that's probably a bit dangerous as well. And then, the adjustment and curb cut of the entrances on and off of Main Street. So I think it's more than just that as a buffer. It will be a buffer, but it's also part of their core business that they're trying to drive
But
through there.
basically,
Other
it's
questions- other
it's
questions- other
drive-through and
questions for the-
traffic count. is
Drive-through
the
and traffic.
Other
concern.
questions for Mr.
Okay, I
Romack?
appreciate you answering my question.
Yep,
Next
you're welcome.
up, Mr. Lee Weingat, 204 Green Lawn Avenue.
Thank you for the opportunity to address you today. I've sent you a letter to each of the 5 members of the committee. I would like to read some of it into the record and to paraphrase some additional comments. And Holly, I would invite you to ask me the same questions, how you'd like this developed. Findlay's zoning code is not in place to enable unplanned growth, but to protect the citizens of this city. I'm going to read exactly what the ordinance says. The ordinance is adopted for the purpose of promoting and protecting the public health, safety, peace, comfort, convenience, and general welfare of the inhabitants of the city of Findlay by protecting and conserving the character, the social, the economic stability of the residential, and industrial, and commercial, and other areas, by using land in the most appropriate way. In your role here, as being appointed to this committee, your role is to protect neighborhoods from growth that would negatively damage our community. The question before you is the rezoning. So anything that makes a larger lot invites a larger business concern. This is zone C1, which is specifically established to provide for the development of commercial and frequently used businesses that are associated with the shopping, service, and family needs of adjacent local residential areas. The use of this land for McDonald's is going to draw enormous traffic into this neighborhood. We've had a lot of talk about the traffic, but let's also look at the impact of the noise late at night, early morning. McDonald's operator has already said this is going to be open for hospital employees before they go to work at 7. It's going to be open late for the people that get off at 11. How's that fit in a residential neighborhood like this? This is going to be a catastrophic damage to our community in the South End. And I urge you to deny the rezoning that invites a larger business. You've got a parkway on the South End. The lawyer Lawyer Coyne from Cleveland, who drew his own map, and he had the map all colored up with different commercial activity marked along this strip. There's nothing on there other than an unused medical office lot and a utility easement for the power substation. Everything on there is a residential area on all sides. So I don't understand where he came from with that. We want you to work for the city of Findlay inhabitants. Hundreds have signed petitions against this rezoning. The people that are promoting this, Batesons live down by Arlington. I believe Larry Ball lives out by Riverdale School District. The lawyers from Cleveland. And McDonald's, Fortune 500 company, is in Chicago. So, who are we working for? Let's protect Findlay. Let's take care of the south end of Findlay and do the right thing. And Holly, I invite your question on how we'd like to see this property developed.
Thank you, Mr. Weingart. Questions for Lee?
Well, Lee would like me to ask that question. I would love to have your input.
I would like to see a restaurant on that lot. Okay? It's zone C1. There are no fast food drive-throughs in the city of Findlay on a C1 lot. Okay? I don't want to see this rezoned for C2, and I don't want to see a easement or I don't remember the term, for conditional use for drive-through on a C1 area. That's going to open up Findlay to more discussions like this where you have inappropriate development proposed for a lot. I've invited a restaurant to open on that lot. I sent them a message to DK Diner down in Grandview Heights, Columbus area. Lovely small town restaurant, great for breakfast, lunch, dinner. Small, it's right in a neighborhood. It would fit on that lot. We want a restaurant that serves breakfast, that's got a couple parking spots, something you can walk to, something that closes at 9 o'clock at night, and does not have 24 cars parked in the drive-through.
Other questions for Lee?
I appreciate your answer.
Thank you, Lee. Next up is Beth Warnicki, 1822 Windsor Place.
Okay. I'm just going to differ just so we hear two sides to a story. When I first heard about McDonald's going in on 6th and Main, my first thought was, wow, that'd be a good idea. I understand I don't live there. There's no fast food right there. It's a good, well-respected business, and it's filling a vacant location. It kind of looks bad for the city. So I thought at least someone should mention some benefits from having a McDonald's or a restaurant, but McDonald's is the issue at the moment at this location. Think of all the people from the hospital and doctor's offices further down Main and the people who work down Lake Cascades at the surgery center and other doctor's offices there that are located. People like to pick up coffee at McDonald's in the morning, or it would give them a quick, close alternative for lunch that doesn't really exist right now. I also would see it as a benefit for young parents who are trying to get their children to soccer or baseball games at Emory Adams Park. Maybe there's no time to grab something to eat before they go, or the game runs late, or mom and dad are exhausted, because isn't that the true benefit of fast food? I was driving back to Findlay from Arlington last week, and it was close to or past dinner time, and I thought, if that McDonald's was there, it would be perfect to grab something and then go over to my side of town, because nothing else in town is convenient for that route with having to go all the way through town, so I ended up eating at home, which is fine, but it would have been great. As far as safety, there's a light at Baldwin for students on the east side of Main to cross, and although I obviously don't want to see anyone injured, I can't see where it would be the fault of a new business if someone decides to unsafely cross the street. A crossing guard could be placed on McPherson for students to cross there, similar to the one on Broad Avenue that's used for the high school. It would also be a wonderful source of employment for young people in the neighborhood that don't drive yet and could walk to work. There are many CEOs and business people in the country who trace their first job back to a local McDonald's. It was our son's first job as well. This is already a commercial corner, and it's simply sitting vacant at the moment, which doesn't look good. The look could be modified, as it is in other communities where they want to maintain a certain ambiance, if you will. You could require a low sign, and shrubs or landscaping could be put in on the Main Street side of the property to take away from the commercial look. Lastly, I believe McDonald's could be a better alternative to some other businesses that could easily locate there with no questions asked. The north end vacant Fifth Third building is now a skilled gaming location, and this could have easily been one as well, except for the temporary change recently put in by City Council. You could also possibly, say, have a vape store that would be worse on the smell factor than what I think you may have from McDonald's. I'm not trying to start an argument. I'm just listing what I see as the other side, and that's really all I had to say.
Thank you. Thank you, Beth. Questions for Beth? Next up is Rob Wood of 503 Coventry Drive.
Thank you very much. I wish to speak against the rezoning, and I wish to address first the contribution to increased traffic congestion, ingress, and egress. I recently visited the currently Findlay locations of McDonald's. There were double lines of traffic going through the drive-through. On Trenton, 14 cars in line, 13 in the parking lot. At the Tiffin Avenue location, 19 in line, 12 in the parking lot. Now, I cite this experience not because it is representative of a traffic average, but because it supports the common sense notion that sometimes these sites get very busy. When might these times be? A drive-through performance study conducted by QSR Magazine, which is the fast food trade journal, found that fast food chains do 60 to 70% of their business in the drive-through. The same study found that the busiest part of the day at the drive-through was the snack part of the day between 2 p.m. to 5 p.m. A plot of busy times on a Friday for the current Tiffin Avenue McDonald's, available on the web, shows 2 p.m. traffic virtually identical to the lunchtime peak, and the 2 to 3 p.m. periods to be the second busiest overall. There are 3 elementary or middle schools in this area dismissing at 2:30 p.m. Residents are very familiar with Donnell students on the sidewalk after their 2:30 p.m. dismissal. Increased traffic during school dismissals, children plus additional cars, is not a good combination. It is not a safety-first choice. I next want to address the change to the residential character of the South Main Street neighborhood. The Courier reported that lawyer Coyne dismissed issues raised against the facility as, quote, very subjective in nature. Well, quality of life issues are inherently subjective. You might prefer an apartment on Busy Door Avenue in Toledo. I might prefer a quiet home in Findlay. For those residents who are accustomed to the character of South Main as it is, additional traffic, noise, smell, signage, and light pollution represent an impingement on their quality of life. Although subjective, it is nonetheless real. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Questions? Thank you kindly. And that is the end of the public comment. Here representing the applicant is Tom Cadozi. Tom?
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity. My name is Tom Gattosi. I'm an attorney, and I'm here on behalf of Epic Collaborations and Dr. Angie Bates. And I want to make that clear. I'm not here on behalf of McDonald's. McDonald's is not here. Their attorney is not here. I'm here because I'm advocating for her and what she has going on here. The issue before you, is this residential lot. It's a 38.5-foot wide lot. As you can see, it runs the same length as the bank property. Yes, there has been the opportunity at the moment is looking at a McDonald's, but that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about whether this lot makes sense to continue to be a residential lot. That, if anyone's walked by where that house is and the 2 houses next to them, they're not in good condition. They're in poor condition. That house went through foreclosure. It was not being maintained properly. My client purchased the property so that it wouldn't continue to be unmaintained. She has to cut the grass over there. In fact, she cuts some of the grass in the front, on the other, by the sidewalk there. It's what we're asking for is having that lot be added to the bank property. We're talking about, Dr. Bateson operates her dental practice right in that corner. She's been there for 12 to 14 years. she's as concerned about safety, traffic, and litter as anyone else because she needs her patients to be able to have access there. She doesn't want to have the property full of litter, and she doesn't want it to be unsightly. So she's as concerned about that. She's not going anywhere. Her dental practice is going to be there. So part of her desire to purchase that property, the bank property, was to make sure that there was a good use there and a good neighbor there. Everyone is focused on McDonald's, McDonald's, McDonald's. There's concerns about they don't serve healthy food. There's concerns about they're a big bad corporation. You know, some of that may be fair, some of it's not fair. What is fair is concerns about traffic, concerns about safety, concerns about litter. We have those same concerns. She doesn't want to have a business that goes in there that is going to cause disruption to her business or to the neighborhood. But this is not Main Street here. I mean, these houses are not Main Street. This house is in terrible condition. It was for years.
Tom, 1 second.
Yes.
Could we keep the comments, oh, I missed you. I did. I'm sorry. I'll get you. I'll get you in a minute. I'll get you in a minute. It's my fault.
Well, if you'd like to speak now, go ahead. Do you
Tom,
want to
can
have
we
her?
do that?
Yeah, sure.
Appreciate it.
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
I apologize.
Heidi, I'm sorry. I do apologize. That is all on me.
I thank you for.
So we have Heidi Raymond Munoz from 1318 South Main Street. And once again, I do apologize.
Thank you for your time. Again, my name is Heidi Raymond Munoz. I live at 1318 South Main with my daughter. I grew up at 1330 South Main. I can see this property from my parents' window. They still live at the 1330. This property directly is across from our alley. You can see the alleyway there with the fence. We see it every single day. When she bought this property, it had been a rental and did have some problems. She bought the property and turned the utilities off or had them turned off. It has not been upkept by her since she bought it. That is a lie. It does need work, but it is a residential house in a residential neighborhood. I remember when they built the bank and tore down the houses to build it, eroding the residential section where my home is, where my new home is. I grew up walking past it. I also was part of the argument and the fight to keep Speedway from doing what they did to our neighborhood by tearing down yet another house on that section. Now they have allowed the building to be purchased by another company that doesn't give a damn about the residences of that neighborhood. They've let it go. It is trashed. It is dirty. It is not well kept. They mowed the grass 4 times last summer. There are dead shrubs in front. The agreement with the neighborhood when they put it in was to maintain it. No one enforced it. And now it is a mess. As far as the doctor's office, my father often goes over and edges the property because it is also not well kept. She put in flowers at the bank and promptly let them die. That's not maintaining the property in the best interests of the residences. We have watched our neighborhood piece by piece get sold to corporate interest. And McDonald's is not a local business, which is what C1 stands for. This property that you're trying to rezone is a residence in a residential neighborhood. It is not a business. If you allow them to take this building and make it part of the other properties, we will have to fight to have a buffer that you guys talk about, this buffer, this row of arborvitae. Is it going to stop the trash? Is it going to stop the light? Is it going to stop the sound? An arborvitae, when you put it in, is maybe 5 feet tall. How many years until it's 12 feet tall, which it will eventually get to. But by then, we've had to tolerate 5, 6 years of sound, of trash. We people in this neighborhood live here. We spend our evenings outside on our porches, in our backyards. We use this alley as access to our garages, not as a street, which is what will become if that becomes a drive-through. A drive-through is not a C1. It is up to you to save our neighborhood from further erosion.
Thank you. Thank you. Questions? Thank you once again. I do apologize for the confusion. Mr. Catozzi. Thank you, sir.
So again, and I appreciate everyone's comments. I appreciate your comments. I do. My client does take care of the property. She has her business there. There's a vacant bank building there. A vacant building is not good for anybody. It's not good for the city or anyone. It is a commercial property. It's C1. Everyone's focusing on the drive-through, and again, that's not the issue right now. The issue is, does it make sense to have this residential property that it was not in good condition before? It was anyone could have bought this out of foreclosure. It wasn't some private sale. She bought it so that it wouldn't be an eyesore and continue to be an eyesore, which it was before. It wasn't in good condition. And inside, when she bought it, it's not livable. It's not just simply putting a coat of paint on it. It's a mess. And so there's a lot of sense in adding this property to the bank property. It does accomplish a goal, and the houses next to it aren't in great condition. This isn't the same as going up Main Street when you go up McPherson. There are other uses on that property. They may not be zoned for commercial, but there's other commercial uses being used on that property when you go up the street. This isn't all residential. And the intent is not to load up all sorts of buildings up adjacent to that. That's not the intent at all. But to have that random property sit there that is adjacent to it, it just makes sense. We believe it makes sense to add it. Now, I will tell you that we expected McDonald's to be part of this conversation. They are not here because they are looking at what to do. People are talking about traffic studies. They're talking about curb cuts. They have not gotten to that point. This was about rezoning the parcel. They haven't gotten to site plan approval. They haven't had the site plan they brought was a preliminary. The idea was to have discussions, to have traffic studies, to have full landscape plans, to discuss curb cuts, to address the traffic concerns, to address those issues. We're already shooting down the McDonald's before they even seen the plans of what it could be. And there's plenty of opportunity to shoot it down if that's not going to work. There's plenty of opportunity to have that happen. What we're asking for as the property owner, because if McDonald's doesn't go there, we're still going to look for a commercial property. It is a commercial property. It's not a residential property. It's been a commercial property for a long time. It was a bank for a long time with a drive-through. That's what it was, and that's what it is now. The ATM is still working. So I understand that the drive-through is a conditional use. You'd have to get special approval for the conditional use through your code. But we still, again, that issue is not about where we're at right now. We're talking about that small sliver property. I don't believe it's a residential creep into the residential property. It's currently sitting there. It's dilapidated. So that's what we're asking. Now, I found out late yesterday that McDonald's was not going to come. My client and I found out that they weren't coming. They don't have all the plans and renderings and everything. They're trying to figure out what the next step is. We're trying to figure out what their next step is. I know we asked it to be tabled last month to come to this point. They did have a meeting at the mayor's office, I think, on Monday. My client was there. There was a brief discussion, or a discussion. I was not part of that. They still need to figure out what to do here, and I don't know what they're going to do. But regardless, if it's not a McDonald's, we still believe that this makes sense to add this to the commercial property. So we would respectfully request, because we did not anticipate that McDonald's would not be here, that either that you might table this to give us more time to figure out what the next step is. because we'll have no more information. They have to decide one way or the other what they're going to do. But please, keep in mind that we have a vacant bank building that needs to be repurposed, and that's what we're trying to do. So I appreciate your time. I appreciate your consideration.
Thank you. Questions for Mr. Gattozzi? Questions or comments from committee members?
I guess.
Mr. Hellman.
I guess what I would mention is, when this was tabled the last time, it was tabled so we could figure out some of the issues that were here. And I had said at the time that I was against commercial creep, moving this into the west for that home. And I would much rather have seen the owner, whoever it might be, fix the house up and maintain it as a residence. I didn't object to vacating the alleyway, however, but I'm not in favor of seeing this commercial district spread any further into the west, the neighborhood there to the west on McPherson. So for those reasons, I'm not in favor of the zoning.
Other questions or comments from the committee members? Mr. Baumann.
I guess just to kind of echo Mr. Hellman's comments there, I'm also not in favor.
Mr. Gattozzi, Mr. Coyne at the last meeting, this is just a comment. Mr. Coyne at the last meeting offered the traffic study as a reason why to table. So the fact that it's not, I don't know that obviously I was not here, but I don't, rewatching the Planning and Zoning Committee from last month, there was questions about traffic. Mr. Coyne offered the traffic study. I did meet with him on Monday with the mayor. It isn't available, but you're correct. It's kind of this mix of a site plan that the applicant offered with the request to rezone, and then it turned into traffic requests, and it is a little mixed. But one thing that isn't is that, and I think Mr. Weingart hit this. This is a C1, or hit this point. This is a C1 commercial district, and C1 neighborhood commercial district, and it's to serve the family and the needs of adjacent and local residential areas. It's for the establishment of smaller shops and stores serving the localized area, rather than a large business serving regional areas. That's what a C1 is. The applicant's intended use really is a C2 use. It's for a general commercial district to serve the commercial businesses and service needs of a regional area. And in fact, and I'm going to quote Mr. Coyne at the City Planning Commission as he was describing the neighborhood on West McPherson coming down from Cooper. He said that we are mindful of the fact that this would serve a good part of the city of Findlay. He described the use of the restaurant as being of a C2, not of a C1. You don't need a double drive-through that can stack 13 cars in order to serve the adjacent and local residential areas. Much has been made, or some comments have made, about the accessibility to other fast food establishments on the south side. The proposed restaurant is less than 1 mile. It's really 0.9 miles from Wilson's. And that would be for me, about a 12 to 15 minute walk. And on the way, I would pass Little Caesars, Arby's, and Subway. By car, that's probably about a minute 20 drive. So the fact that there's not access to other facilities or other establishments, that's kind of a straw man argument. The public response has been overwhelming. South Main Street Neighborhood Association, which is South Main Street from Lima to 6th Street, really to McPherson, gathered over 80 signatures representing 42 households. I am on that petition because I do live on South Main Street at Main Street and 3rd. The Sherman Park neighborhood, as Emily mentioned, gathered, I counted 114 signatures. Sherman Park being directly to the south of the requested restaurant. I have personally received countless emails and phone calls and conversations, and up to today, 100% of these, less now two, were in opposition. One spoke today, Beth. The other was an email from Mr. Ball. And a quick aside, I know the Ball family. I have known them for ages. Their sons and my sons went through Boy Scouts together. Mr. Ball, Larry Ball, is a great guy. I consider him a friend. He has been a dedicated franchisee of McDonald's. They support our community. He is very generous with his time and his treasures, supporting, amongst others, Boy Scouts. If there would be a fast food restaurant in this location, quite honestly, I want somebody like Larry and his family running it. I consider him a very good operator and a great business person. And I'd like the fact that there's somebody I can call if there was having troubles. But be that as it may, the public outcry has I think it's because they see the obvious. I had a conversation with my son who now lives out of state, and I mentioned this, and he instinctively knew that it wasn't right. And he knew it because he grew up in the area. He had a paper route in the area. He rode his bike in the area. He went to school in the area, and he knew it didn't fit. And that kind of, but neighbors don't put it into zoning terms. They don't put it into C1, C2. Bill Shadle at the City Planning Commission meeting, he summarized it really this way. As he wore his garish shoes with his suit, he said the shoes don't match the suit. And what he really was saying is that the C2 use of a fast food, high intensity restaurant doesn't match a C1 zoning in a neighborhood, historic neighborhood area. And I think he's right. The shoes, the zoning or the use doesn't match the suit. The zoning in this case doesn't match the land use plan. And then Bill also said there has to be a better solution, as he was talking about what happened with the U-Haul proposal. And I think there is better solutions here. What could those be? Better, different types of residential. Potentially an O1 office and institution use. Functionally, this lot has acted like an O1, which is office and institutions, which is to serve as a buffer area between residential and more intense commercial districts. Although zoned as C1, it has, for as long as I've lived in Findlay, for decades really, and if it went from housing to immediately to a bank and a doctor's office, it has acted as a buffer from the more intense commercial use of Kroger and Speedway as a buffer for the neighborhood. O1 would be a better solution. Public comment is really summarizing what we're hearing in our strategic planning about a small town character and support of neighborhoods. An email this week from a neighbor pointed out something that I didn't have right at my hands. And she said, one of the recommendations made in the 2020 Hancock County Regional Planning Commission housing study was to protect the existing stock of homes and energize neighborhoods. I think allowing this intensity of use and this commercial creep into the neighborhood, into this residential neighborhood, does exactly the opposite. And for those reasons, in light of the overwhelming public opposition to the proposal for this site, because the proposal expands commercial creep into a residential neighborhood that is truly the heart of Findlay's historic south end, because the zoning change dramatically changes the further threatens the intended use of these properties as laid out in our land use plan, I'm motioning now for denial of the request.
Second.
Second, Mr. Ballman. We have a motion to deny and a second. Questions or comments on the motion? Call the question. All those in favor of denying the motion to rezone, please say aye.
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 Those opposed, same sign. Ms. Frischie had informed me earlier that she had a 1 o'clock appointment that she could not miss, and hence her departure. The motion is denied 4-0. And there is no other business before this committee, I'll call this meeting to a close. Got it.